Welcome, everyone. It's great that a bunch of you have joined us in person and virtually as well. Thank you so much for joining us for our talk today. And so just want to give a bit of an introduction about Global ERG. My name is Elisa Vitale. I am one of the co-chairs of Global ERG along with Antoine. And I'm the content instruction coordinator for K-12 STEM education outreach programs here at Berkeley Lab. And so Global ERG's mission is to provide a sense of support and community for international Berkeley Lab employees. And we do this by raising awareness of the challenges international employees face when moving from their home country to the US, creating opportunities for domestic employees to support their international colleagues, and celebrating the diverse culture that international employees bring to Berkeley Lab. So you can learn more about us at global.lbl.gov, including keeping up with some of our events coming up. So we do have a hike coming up on Sunday and also an outdoor lunch for international employees and their partners on June 11th. Of course, all are welcome. But yeah, you can see more details of that on our webpage. And so I just want to thank everyone for being here again today. And of course, thank you so much, Ben, for being here and giving us a talk. We're really super excited to hear all about it. So I am passing it on to someone, I don't know, but they will come on stage. So
Hello. Okay. And then I just share screen. Okay. All right. Can everyone see that? Cool. Okay. Hello. Yeah. So my name is Sissy. I'm a doctoral fellow here at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. I specifically work at the Advanced Light Source, which is the building that you see in the image with the beautiful view. And the advanced light source is a synchrotron. So if you take a look at the image to the left, you can see there's an electron gun. And the idea of a synchrotron is really to accelerate your electrons to really high energies. And then you can use this high energy beam to do a variety of different types of experiments. So we've got physicists, biologists, engineers, chemists, everyone doing their unique experiments at each end station, which is where we've separated beams for everyone to have their use of them. I specifically do angle resolved photoemission spectroscopy. So here you can see a little schematic of it where we have that high energy UV light hitting a sample. I work on calcium ruthenate, and when you have this high energy beam of light, it transfers some of its energy to electrons inside the sample. The electrons get very excited, escape, and then we capture them using this hemispherical analyzer. So you see the schematic on the left, and then on the right, you see what it looks like in real life. And it's just surrounded with all of this high UHV, high vacuum equipment, and a lot of aluminum foil to keep it all nice and clean. And what we do is map out what these electrons look like inside of our sample. So here's what some of the data looks like. And we have energy versus momentum. So this is essentially how much energy some of these light particles have and where it comes from inside of our crystal. And using this data, we can really kind of pick apart some of the characteristics of the materials that we study. We can also actually take slices in energy, and this is what you see on the right. And when we plot out in what we call momentum space, what these look like, we can also gain more physical information about all of our different sorts of materials that we want to study. So why love light? I am, as a doctoral fellow, I am not from LVNL specifically. I actually am associated with the University of British Columbia in Canada and the Max Planck Institute for Solid State Research. And I love light because it allows me to do all of this very cool science while traveling to all of these incredible places. And it also allows us to decorate our end station hutch so that it looks really nice and very Christmassy all year round.
All right. So also good afternoon from me. Today is May 16, which is the International Day of Light. So I would like to wish you all a shining welcome, people here in the auditorium, but also people online. My name is Marlene Turner. I'm a research scientist here at Berkeley Lab, and my special connection to light is that I work with high power laser systems that actually we have a picture over here provide us with very intense beams of light, but also with lights. Oh, I'm not close enough. Okay. But also with lights emitted from plasmas. But there's many groups here at Berkeley Lab that actually are closely connected to light or providing light so that others can use them, like, for example, the advanced light source. Also very closely connected to light is the work from our special guests here today that hopefully we'll hear much more in a little bit. It is my great pleasure to welcome the artists and the team behind Illuminate, where we have here with us today the artist Ben Davis, who's the CEO and founder of Illuminate, and the creative collaborator Michael Fredrickson. I have a bit more to say about you, but you're very welcome to come up here. So first, what is Illuminate? Illuminate is an art nonprofit organization with the mission to rally large groups of people together to create impossible works of public art that through awe, free humanity spared in nature. And I very much encourage you to go to their website and have a look at the 10 principles. It's really enlightening. Ben and Michael, welcome to Berkeley Lab. It's a great pleasure to have you here today. And I'm especially pleased because Berkeley Lab is a science lab. And often arts and sciences are seen as two very different fields that are kind of not connected. But I think that's not true. There's many shared skills and many shared values. For example, both fields require creative thinking outside of the box and pushing the boundaries of what we consider as normal or as acceptable. So I really love that we can have this exchange. So last, before I give the stage to Ben, let me give you some background and information about his impressive career and background. So I'm sure that all of you have noticed and enjoyed the lights and the patterns on the Bay Bridge at night. And in fact, Ben Davis is the visionary behind the so-called Bay Lights. Ben Davis is helplessly drawn to the flame of public art, upending his career and life to pursue bold, light-filled visions with a growing body of large-scale works across San Francisco. Ben's quest is to transform San Francisco through light and enlightenment so that it's known internationally as the city of awe, and I love that. For more than a quarter century, Ben has led communications on civic mega projects and matters of public safety, public health, public transit, the environment, urban revitalization, and public art. He was also the manager of public information on the $4 billion Boston Harbor cleanup project. But actually, he does much more. He's given multiple TED Talks, is the recipient of 2 international Webby Awards, has edited and published a book of poems and portraits, and was the artist behind the well-known Pie in the Sky project. However, there's also many other things that I really love. The website is absolutely great, and I hope you'll show us some more of your works. So before I give the floor to Ben, I would also like to thank Antoine and Danielle for organizing this very special event. I would like to thank all of you for being here and enjoying this. And Ben, the floor is all yours.
Thank you for that gracious introduction and the recap of my career. And some in places I don't really talk about anymore, but they're all good stuff. I appreciate it. It's truly an honor to be here in this this place of science. I think of this quote from William Gibson, the sort of dystopian author, who said, "If you want to know where technology is going, just see what artists and thieves are doing with it." So, and I think about technology a lot. You know, I often, when the Bay Lights went live, there was a lot of folks who came out and wanted to talk to me about art and technology. And I was just never that interested in talking about the technology part of it. To me, technology is just a tool. It can be used in any way you want. What really matters is the intention. You know, art has always been about technology in a sense that there's a new pigment that you can make. There's some new thing. And art's a really great place to explore the potentials of discoveries. And I look forward to the possibility, as far out as you guys are, if someone has an idea for the way your technology is emerging that we might be able to share with the world through some form of radically accessible public art, I'm all ears, because that's where something magical can happen. But I think, you know, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And I think that the question of art and theology may be much more important than the question of art and technology. Technology will keep doing what it needs to do, again, what really matters is what is our intention as we go through the application of those new tools that we create. And let me just say here on this International Day of Light, you know, I celebrate light. I've sort of transitioned my career over to doing it from working on a lot of, really I had a communication firm that for many years helped mega projects communicate. I helped name and brand over $15 billion for the public infrastructure projects. Among those, one of those was the Bay Bridge seismic safety projects, the largest public work project in California history. And one morning, as I was trying to figure out how you could let this bridge shine in the region's consciousness, because it had about 6 months of the first bridge and the bridgification of the Bay Area, where it was considered this marvel and this testament to engineering and sort of American ingenuity coming through the throes of the Great Depression. There were 4 days of celebrations, newspaper inserts, fireworks shows, you know, symphonies and poems were commissioned. And then the Golden Gate Bridge opened and the world's attention drifted, and the Bay Bridge just for 7 decades was the Cinderella Bridge, second busiest bridge in America. But if you thought about it at all, it was usually for the sense of annoyance, like how are you going to get across it? And I was trying to figure out one early mornings I biked to the ferry building, how could you let this building shine in the region's consciousness again? And at that moment, as I had my cup of coffee, the sun was actually coming up behind the bridge, dancing through the cables, and it just hit me as a sort of thunderbolt. It still changes my body temperature to think about it, that maybe it didn't have to be just a bridge, it could be a canvas of light. Now, let me say, I'm not a technologist. I almost assiduously avoid understanding anything, because then I become responsible, and I don't want to be responsible. But the idea for minutes just filled me with this sort of strange energy, just changed my own body temperature, and I could feel the beauty of it. And I almost walked away from it and thought, oh, that's a crazy idea. But then I realized, wait, that's you being afraid of being judged crazy. That's you being afraid of knowing what this idea would really take. You know, you've committed to making decisions. I like to get binary sometimes from either a place of love or fear. And the truth is I was making, as I still do, many decisions from a place of fear. They're designed to come out in my favor a little bit. They're designed to protect me rather than care about others. And I just decided anytime I could get consciousness, I was going to make that decision from a place of love, whether it was a big decision or small decision. And in that moment, the consciousness visited me. And I thought, no, man, that's the fearful thing is to run away. The loving thing, because you're probably uniquely suited to at least to have a conversation, is to, in the name of love, walk towards this idea. And I did that. And 2.5 years later, the Bay Lights manifested on the side of the Bay Bridge, which is fast in the time of urban transformation. And that one singular gesture of bringing light across the bridge did more to connect people to the built environment with more profound depth of sort of soul than the dozens of websites and white papers and trade shows and all the things I had been doing to get people to connect to their environment. And so I ended up, you know, going from job to career to calling, eventually shut down a 20-year successful design and creative agency and doing what I'm uniquely unqualified to do, which is to run an arts nonprofit here in San Francisco, and just really try and figure out what the next steps were, how I could keep building community and bringing people together to create these big, beautiful, and bold gestures. So this is the Bay Lights round one that we got up, was there for 2013 to 2015. Hold on, great. I'm gonna flip through a bunch of Illuminate projects just kind of visually, just to give you a sense of what we're doing. Each project you'll notice is sort of a unique project. Let me also say this. In that moment of transition, when I went from shutting down the company to, you know, walking blindly into running an arts nonprofit, there was a lot of enthusiasm for this project, the Bay Lights. It was an international sensation. There was nothing like it at the time. And an invitation started to come in from around the world to work on the historic bridge in Montreal, or the tallest residential tower in Chicago, or the unlimited budget project in Dubai. And it all sounded, you know, kind of sexy and lucrative and well-paying, but it was not why I shut down my company. I really wanted to focus on San Francisco and go deep where I live and build community and see if we could just create transformation in a more focused and concentrated way, and not just chase the opportunities, but chase the depth of expression in the project. And so decided to say no to everything that was not inside San Francisco and just see what happened as a sort of a life and thought experience. Also, you know, I care about the climate like a lot of people, and I'm still a hypocrite. I take my vacations time and again, but I'm not hopping on an airplane every week to go some other place. I'm just trying to pull it back in a little bit. It's just a matter of principle. So we were able to bring the bay lights back as a permanent installation, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on in the presentation. We were able to light the Conservatory of Flowers in Golden Gate Park. I was just talking to, what's your name, the sound recording? Carl. I was just talking to Carl about the first sound recording in 1860 or so. This building is, I think it's from about 1872. It's about 10 years after Darwin writes The Origin of the Species. It's actually, a scientific facility to try and understand things, but it had fallen into a little disrepair in the park and wasn't really overly used. It just seemed like a great opportunity to make a campus of light. So we put on that 140-something-year-old building this 50th anniversary of the Summer of Love lighting installation that we were able to sort of squeeze the permission hurdles and get into place, that now shines nightly in the park and has changed usage patterns in the park and may be directly related to Golden Gate Park making Kennedy Drive accessible to pedestrians and cyclists as a permanent feature. It's always nice to see the legacy of these works spilling forward. This was just a quick installation we did to honor Harvey Milk on the anniversary of his 40th election as California's first openly gay elected official. We also embedded his words into the neon of the building that you see as you enter the Castro. I particularly like that these neon tubes are made of glass and are vulnerable out in the public space, like Harvey Milk himself. And these are really beautiful, his words to welcome people into the Castro, as Castro, it means more to the world than it sometimes just means to us in San Francisco. This is an extraordinary installation by artist George Ziziotis called Grace Light at Grace Cathedral. All I can say is you sort of have to experience it, and it's a very tough ticket to get, but I will make a special, we'll have a special night or something so I can get some folks from your lab to come see it. It sort of defies description, the way it lives inside Grace Cathedral and takes advantage of the, at the end of the day, which is millennium of sort of understanding of how do you create awe from the labyrinth at the base of this installation that's based on the Chart Cathedral that goes back beyond that, probably 3,000 years, to the understanding of how you create flying buttresses, to create vaulted ceilings, to create that sense of awe, to church organs, to everything else. This is Illuminate's deepest work, I think. It's just a very moving and powerful expression. This is the first piece that we did that doesn't use any illumination at all. People often ask me, is it about light with you guys? And it's about enlightenment more than light. It's sort of the creating light, inside your chest and lighting people up, the fact that they're alive and human. This installation is in Golden Gate Park. I'll skip the description for now, but if you go to monumentalreckoning.org, you'll understand. This piece actually goes back into the history of slavery in America to 1619. Those ancestors figures that you see around the base of the vacated Francis Scott Key Monument represent the first 350 souls who were kidnapped in what's now Angola, Africa, thrown into the bottom of a ship, tortured, starved. Eventually 20 of them make it to the States and to Virginia and become America's first African slaves, where they move into 10 generations of servitude. Just an interesting story, an interesting telling of that story in that space by an Oakland artist, Dana King. This is actually the old Spreckles Temple of Music that went live in Golden Gate Park in 1920, had a couple of good decades with sort of big band or sort of John Philip Sousa music, and then fell into a century of silence. We brought this back with a new stage that includes an in-place theatrical lighting and Myers Sound System, another East Bay company, Myers Sound. There are 125 live free concerts in the park from Illuminate this year. Some of them are lighted in the dark times of the year. Most of them are just in the daytime. But again, this is sort of the expansiveness of Illuminate is, some of the ways to move people are certainly through the visuals, but also the power of music. We had a month-long celebration of poetry and light, which we brought, huge actually we had 8 lasers on the roof of the Cal Academy that projected a 450-foot line of poetry along the facade of the De Young Art Museum during the whole month of December. Very interesting stuff. I would say that we swing hard at Illuminate. We take on big projects, but we're a very nimble, small organization. At the end of the day, we're a 2-person organization that takes on big ideas and really just inspires radical collaboration all over the place. That's what the band show was for many years before that. Let me just go back to those words. Those words, lift every voice, are from James Weldon Johnson, part of the poem he wrote, Lift Every Voice and Sing. He wrote that poem the same year that the Spreckles Temple of Music opened in 1900. That song goes on to become known as the Black National Anthem. He's a civil rights champion. And it lives in contrast to the Monumental Reckoning installation, where that's the monument to Francis Scott Key, who wrote the Star Spangled Banner that was actually vacated by Juneteenth protesters a couple of years ago. He has a troubled history, not just as a slaveholder, but as someone who deeply worked against the interest of Africans in America in a brutal way. And so it's very interesting to see those two pieces live in contrast to each other. I highly recommend folks to come give a visit to Golden Gate Park. If you come on a Sunday or a Wednesday or a Friday, there's going to be a concert. It's going to be great, free concert. Coming up this month, actually, in San Francisco, this will be the third year that we're illuminating the Pink Triangle. The Pink Triangle has been going up for 26 years or 27 years. Typically before COVID, it was going up in canvas. There were hundreds of volunteers that would assemble it for Pride Weekend above San Francisco. That's a symbol, that Pink Triangle, that the actual Nazis cut out of fabric and put under the clothing of homosexuals as they pushed them onto the cattle cars and for the prisons and the death camps of Nazi Germany. It goes through the filter of the queer and the ACT UP movements during the HIV/AIDS crisis when there was no federal response to the kind of crucible of that rage, and we're not going quiet this time. And then there's this moment of reappropriation where that which marked us for death we now reclaim as a matter of pride. So it's very interesting as a symbol to see it rise from the most brutal origins of fear, isolation, and death through the rage filter and into this moment of kind of love and inclusion. So when COVID came, I know the artist who's been doing this for years, Patrick Carney, and he was not going to be able to do it. And so we in 1 month, or 3 months rather, we rallied the troops and we created an acre of light up on Twin Peaks that shined over the Pride weekend. Last year, because it was such a success, we did it for all of Pride Month. So in California, you no longer have to look at the calendar to know when Pride Month is. You can just look up on the hillside. And this is visible, I think, from this side of the bay when you get a clear night. And this will shine. This will go again live on June 1st this year and stay up through June 30th. And I invite people to come up to Twin Peaks to the parking lot, because I'll be spending a lot of time up there for a visit. We can have a nice sit and a chat and a hot chocolate. It's a great installation, though. I really love this piece. These are our guiding principles in mission statement. I'm not going to read through these right now, but I think I put this in as a transition slide because I actually want to talk to you folks here about 3 specific projects coming up. 3, all of which I think you'll be able to see from here, even though they're San Francisco based. And one of which is about 36 hours old, and I'd like some feedback. So let me jump in. I think that's what comes next. Oh, before that, let me just say this, that this city of awe concept, the idea of just focusing in one place, is sort of part of this law of reverse or inverse focus that I have. You know, if you want to understand how to influence the future, become a good student of the past. If you want to understand how to change the world around you, go within and try and figure out the transformation you need to create in yourself. If you want to have an expansive reach, focus and concentrate your energies in one area. But one of my board members is a guy named Matt Mullenweg, who's the co-founder of WordPress. You know, 1 in 3 websites in the world is on the open source WordPress platform. And I was talking about the projects in San Francisco, and he said, you know, I'm having a hard time tracking them. Could you put them in like a dashboard or a spreadsheet so I didn't have to keep trying to follow you? And I'm like, Matt, if I do that, people are going to see the crazy, man. I get stoned. I bike all day around the city. I think of projects and ideas. I've got this running list of projects in my head. I'm turning down stuff all over the world just to focus in this place. I know the history of the city. I kind of can see possibilities, and I just don't want to put it out into the world. And he goes, you know, I'm kind of known as the open source guy. I think just put it out there and see what happens. So I started to do a spreadsheet. It didn't work, but I ended up going into Google Earth and just using the interface there. So this is just going to be a quick play of sort of the Google Earth City of Awe interface. That once I did this, I'm like, yeah, I was afraid for nothing. This is actually quite interesting. The black dots are finished projects. The red dots are kind of in motion right now. The gray dots are future projects. And then as you click on it, you can sort of fly through the city. So this is going to take us to the Bay Bridge for a second. You can move around it. I think we're going to go to Grace Light of Grace Cathedral. And this was really fascinating for me to think about the city more as a canvas. It also alleviated a lot of anxiety because I didn't have to carry the projects around in my head so much anymore. And it gave legitimacy to me to this notion of creating this City of Awe project. My with all humility, my sort of role model is Gaudi in Barcelona. When you go to Barcelona and Gaudi, Barcelona, you see Gaudi's tiles on the sidewalk. You see the residential building or the personal building. You see the Park Arguel or the Sagrada Familia. These amazing works. So this is the city of all map that really helped. This is only a few months old, but it really helped transform my thinking and my thought about what to do next with the opportunity. Because we've been really getting some interesting opportunity and have built community in San Francisco and now have funding in place for our operating expenses through generosity. That means we don't have to, and we never have, we go through no corporate sponsorship, no corporate filter. We won't sell title naming rights. We won't let your technology take over. We won't give your customers special access. It's completely within the culture of generosity rather than the economy of reciprocity. And we're going to continue down that path and try and create, really augment the spiritual infrastructure of San Francisco. So one of the three projects I want to talk about was the Bay Lights. I think it's probably not visible from this location now, even if you could see it right now, or if you could see that part of the bridge, the western span. We had the nodes, 1 1/4 inch node hiding behind a 2 1/4 inch cable, so that when you're driving across the bridge, you can't see the lights, but you can see them very well from San Francisco. It's a very beloved work of art. But the one consistent criticism that comes in is from people in the East Bay, particularly Oakland, who say, I see you had the wherewithal to point them to the billionaires and the penthouses in San Francisco, but you couldn't let them shine on the poor folks in our community. I try and explain it, and they're like, right. But the reality is the Bay Lights are going to be dark by this time next year. We're having a technical issue that will force them to come down. That's a bummer to think about San Francisco and the Bay Area without them. And in the working to bring them back, we're going to have, for the first time, not an off-the-shelf product, but we're going to have an American-based lighting firm called Musco Lighting, who's taking on the design challenge of creating a light that will do well over time on that space. But they're also looking at what we're calling making the installation a 360 installation, so you actually can see it all the way around the bay. And the big challenge of that is that, that you can start to see, where you can see a bigger view pan with it. The big challenge, or let me go back for a second, is that this concern about it being a driver distraction. And we started this project in 2010. You didn't have a 17-inch monitor in your Tesla. You didn't have a phone in your pocket that was talking to you all the time. You didn't have the tallest building west of the Mississippi with a 9-story television screen on the top of it. And even if I think about it, even back then, the Blue Angels flew over your head. There was the K-Fog Kaboom concert with a grand finale that people drive. People have a lot of capacity to drive with what we consider distraction. And maybe it wouldn't be a driver distraction, but it would be a toll payer benefit if we could put the lights around those cables, invite the whole region into it, and even drivers on the bridge having a world-class experience as they were coming to San Francisco between dawn and dusk. So one of the reasons Michael Fredrickson was with me is he was kind enough to create this video that we put into the hands of Caltrans as part of our permission process to try and turn the corner on that project. So this is a quick take of what it means to drive across the bridge at 50 miles an hour if the bay lights were shining on both sides of the bridge. As you can see, beautiful, but nothing that's going to make you lose your mind, I don't think. So we're in the process of bending some more permissions. It's really what Illuminate does, is we take a system that's designed to say no. We work with people inside that system to deconstruct and reconstruct permissions so that we can say yes to good ideas. We apply technologies in ways people hadn't imagined, and then we attract resources that no one was planning on spending. We can cross those divides, we can get beautiful public art, but that's exactly the muscle we need to exercise if we're going to deal with climate change and other pressing challenges that we face. So I feel like we're sort of a muscle exercising organization in a bigger way. And hats off for Michael for quickly, and even in this one, you actually show climate change in the form of sea rise, Michael, because the ocean's about 15 feet higher than it might be, but it still works. Thank you for getting it done on a deadline. He's a genius. He's a genius. That's super exciting. It's also, part of this is having a good story. So the idea of TBL3 or the Bay Lights 3 is a little depressing, a lot of explanation. The idea behind TBL 360 is very exciting. This idea of delivering aesthetic equity to people around the Bay is a really beautiful concept. Next project up that I want to talk to you guys about goes back into the history of San Francisco into the 1960s. San Francisco had the worst television reception of any major city in America. That's a real serious problem. Imagine if we couldn't have internet in San Francisco, we'd do but just about anything to get it because you feel like you're at a strategic disadvantage. And so everyone would bend their rabbit ears around and so forth. But as a reaction to that, really the four networks got together and they put up, without a lot of talking about it themselves, they snuck up a tower that's only a few feet shorter than the Eiffel Tower, but has an 856-foot head start on top of the hill, Sutro Hill, in the middle of San Francisco. So Sutro Tower rises up in the middle of the city. It goes live on July 4th, 1973. It puts its first transmission out, Independence Day, 1973. It's considered by most at the time, I think, an abomination, but people have come to love it. It's actually kind of an endearing symbol to many people in San Francisco now. It's also just completely emotionally undefined. If you ask people about Sutro Tower, they'll say, what? And you show them like, oh, that thing. On this side, you can sometimes, it's the only thing you can see as you look across the cotton candy of the clouds. I can remember when I was a Cal student up in the Grizzly Peaks. So it's always held a fascination for me. This is an East Bay view of it. Very dominating piece. Also, I will say, I just noticed in this photograph that I have here that I'm not a big fan of Salesforce Tower and the art on top of it. I think it's a valiant effort, but I think you just can't mask the ego at a certain point. You just can't get rid of it. It's sort of got a flawed concept. Also, we are here in this place of science, but there's always this waltz between the tallest building sort of representing the most important values at the time of any place. So the church could be taller, or the academic institution, or the mall, the Great Mall. In this case, I like the idea that we could create an installation that would be more spiritual and love-based in nature, that actually would be a little taller than Sutro Tower, than Salesforce Tower. So the idea with this idea is that in about 14 months, with Michael's help, because we need to get some visualizations on this, in the upper reaches of Sutro Tower, in that upper basket up there, we would create a 15-meter kinetic, wind-powered, reflective, orb-shaped sculpture called Love Above that would, in the metaphor of the transmission tower, gather the available light, redistribute some of it back out to you. And if you were looking up at it and catching the sparkle of it, this piece, Love Above, you'd sort of know, like, if I'm seeing this, there's probably 1,000 or 10,000 other people in this moment engaged in this act of observing this ball in space. And if I had this little intention of love, of both giving and receiving love, there's an energetic shift that can happen, both individually and collectively. But all of that's a lot of fancy words for also saying, in the spirit of 1973, that we would put a 50-foot disco ball in top of Sutro Tower. Now, it won't really look like a disco ball, it will read a little bit like a disco ball, but I think there's no way to avoid the comparison. And actually, I think it's kind of a sweet comparison given the 1973 origins and the need to have a little bit of celebratory love. But there's no question that there's a true depth of this notion of the metaphor of sending and receiving love on a massive scale from the highest point in the city. All of Illuminate's projects, I will say, are less likely to happen than happen. And the trick is really developing this constellation of belief around them and then navigating the permission systems. This project can happen, for sure. It's a privately held piece of infrastructure. The permission path is very strange. It could be very streamlined, although there needs to be some process to it. But I can certainly see the value of this piece, and I can even still see the possibility. And we're going to do our best to go for it. How are we doing on time? Okay, great. I'm gonna go through one more project, then we'll have some questions. Mostly me having questions for you to start off with. Let me preface this by saying, while I've been thinking about this next project for a long time, it didn't crystallize till this weekend, when I was off in some weird event, mostly to talk to some guys who were into lasers in a big way. They were running a festival out in the sort of, the wooded areas outside of Sacramento called the UNTZ Festival, UNTZ. Just cracks me up as a name. Obviously, it's a multi-day kind of people dressed around in onesies, all just dancing to house music or whatever it is, EDM all the time for long periods of time. But my guys were running the lasers, so it was fun to go hang out with them. And so I just put these videos on. I'm going to try and talk through as they play. Keep going here. So this is the Golden Gate Bridge time lapse at night. Golden Gate Bridge at night goes away. There's sort of a reason for it. Some of it's by design. This is a bridge, created in built and came online in 1937. There was lots of memos and discussions about how to light it and what the color should be. Ultimately, Irving F. Morrow, who was appealing to Strauss, who was in charge, wins the battle on the odd color, that notion of the industrial orange. But he has vision for 1937 technology lighting. And Strauss says, you win on the color, you get nothing on the lights, we're out of money. And for 50 years, there was no lights on it other than the road deck lighting. In 1987, on the 50th anniversary of the bridge, they added some of the lights that you see now on the towers, which are consistent with Irving Morrow's lighting description, very gentle coming up the towers. But it's still, by contemporary standards, kind of under illuminated, even though that can be nice. And I just always think about this bridge as, what could you do? And of course, this bridge is just a show, like a postcard from this place. If you look across the bay, amazing to see. So the idea for the installation is, it's called the Golden Harp. And really what it is it's the world's largest fog responsive light sculpture. And along those, what I think are 500 cables, 250 on each side. There's actually 4 cables that make up what looks like one cable coming down in each cluster here, each set 50 feet apart. We would put a single laser that would be sort of golden color that would rise up, and the light would stop at the upper cable, the suspension cable at the top. So that, when there was nothing in the atmosphere, it would be pretty much, you couldn't see a thing. But as the fog started to come in, even in the daytime or the evening, you would start to catch this amazing fog-inspired performance, where the fog and the elements of Earth actually are what create the visual change. I always think that the art I like most is the art that lets you see what's already there with such clarity that it feels brand new. It feels like it's never been really seen before that way. So this project, while I know when I walk out into the world at some point and say there's a vision to bring 500 lasers onto the Bay Bridge, people will throw up and try and run me out of town. I think I can have a conversation long enough that says, no, here's why this could be safe. Here's why this makes sense. Here's why this won't kill birds. Here's why this will be visually interesting. Here's why this will be energy efficient. Here's why this would be worthy of a 2-year temporary installation on the side of our bridge as a way to celebrate the infrastructure, but also celebrate nature and Earth. So that's the quick rundown on the new project. With that, let me see if this will play.
We are all made of light.
Not playing. Good. Should we try one more time? There's one video that's kind of cool. Let me just see if it's going to play. One more time. Let's cancel that. And let's kill the screen. With that, let me take a big breath. Thank everybody. Thank you for you folks up there, for those who are still around. And let me just start by throwing it open to any questions or observations or thoughts.
Yes. Okay, yeah, if everyone can hear me. Yeah, so yeah, the question in the chat is just, how do you go about selecting locations for the project?
It's a really great question. And the truth is, the projects pick me. I swear to God. I mean, it doesn't feel right. I mean, I sort of say, why is this visitation coming to me? And I've learned to try and trust it and not second guess it and bend my life around to try and manifest the visions. But they come in these kind of thunderous forms where they kind of catch me by surprise. I think about things a lot, and I do. Seriously, I get stoned and bike around the city all the time. And that is part of my creative process. I'm a former bike messenger. I know how to have like the Tesla operating system that means that I'm totally safe and I don't have to check in, and I can fly off and have a thought that's one thought for hours. And projects tickle in, but then certain projects, like I've been thinking about the Golden Gate Bridge for a long time. And it wasn't until I turned the corner on this really weekend to think, you know what, these lasers, we could repurpose this. These are not the Cyclops killing lasers that I have in my childhood brain of how a laser is going to cut somebody in half. This light can be done in an effective and powerful and beautiful way that takes advantage of a different way of thinking about how light can be trained and focused, and its relationship to the natural world when it's imposed upon the built world. And so, that's I feel like that's like a lot of these projects, it's just tuning in and trying to keep your antenna super high and then trusting the signals that come in. And I don't try and consciously do it too much. I do try and tune in though to the need of the city. I try and tune into equity. I try and tune in to the principles of Illuminate. One of those is, create nothing that requires paid admission, be free to all, select projects that require sort of rich collaboration, be bound by the principles of love and equality and beauty. So there's a lot that goes into sort of setting up the guardrails. Also, live or die with integrity. Be willing to take on projects and refuse corporate sponsorship, even if that means failing. I mean, we're really there's an attraction to integrity as part of what we do in terms of our ability to attract people to the projects. Question? Anything else?
Well, first, thank you. I love your work. I love your ideas and your principles. My question is, a lot of this is a lot of hassle. It takes a lot of people that maybe don't want to help you at first, and a lot of paperwork and a lot of, what makes you do it? What is the drive behind that, makes you get up in the morning and say, no, this needs to happen?
I think the most important part of the job in some ways is just naivete. I somehow forget how damn hard it's going to be. And if I really knew it, every time I go, there's no way I would begin this journey. But you get into it. And it's a journey of, like I say, it's a journey of 10,000 conversations, really. I don't have a checkbook. I can't force anyone to do anything. I can't threaten anybody. I can't punish or reward. The only thing I can do is inspire. And what inspires people, you have to find the words that work, and you find the images that work, and you turn every human into a protagonist in the process, and let the antagonist be the system that's designed to say no, that the humans have to overcome. Let the antagonist be the way the technology is currently applied, having to be reapplied often in a different way. And then it's the vagaries of money. How do you attract resources no one was planning on spending? But every human on my project is a pretty good person. And even when they're playing a role, historic preservation has a job to do. That job is often in conflict with me trying to create change and transformation. So, you have to be relentlessly charming. People have to know you fucking mean it, and feel it in you. And then still, I can't do anything. I realized, let me just back up one other story, interesting, energetic part of this. When I started doing the Bay Lights and really gave myself to it, I found myself using a lot of language like, well, we'll fight through it. We're going to be the tip of the spear. We'll have a blitz. We'll have an army of people do this. And I'm like, wow, I have a lot of bellicose, war-based language that I just naturally use. I don't like the feel of it. Is there another way to talk about this project? And I started, anytime I could gain consciousness, swapping one word or one phrase out for another. So instead of fighting, we would persevere. Simple, nice transition. Instead of having an army of supporters, we would have a constellation of believers. And not only did I feel better, the people I spoke to started to melt around this process. So that notion of bringing people into this constellation of belief, knowing there's a divine calculus associated with the path from impossible to possible that goes through belief. And that there's some magic moment when that one person finally comes in that tips it over, that which was once considered impossible, in the spirit of Nelson Mandela, it's always impossible until it's done. And the only way it can really happen is with large, diverse, passion-driven, principled people working truthfully against often their own self-interest. The bureaucrat takes on this much more paperwork with no more pay. The technologist comes in and there's no you're going to get rich in this process. There's no IP that anyone, well, there's some people have collected a little IP here and there, but for the most part, it's not a get rich play. It's like, how can I make a difference? How can I take my genius as a human being and bend it into this equation to make a difference for this project that probably can't go forward without me? That's the other thing, that transformation through vulnerability is all that we really have. And I think there's two ways to create transformation. There's sort of the force of transformation, and it's a little more, it's a little more fear-based and you make things happen. But then there's just this vulnerable, love-based way to create change, which when I go to people, they could wish me luck, but they can sort of see, like, how can I help you make this happen? Because they can tell I need their help. And I might need your help with the Golden Gate Bridge, knowing what you know about lasers, because we gotta have this conversation.
I know a lot about laser safety as well. So.
Good, perfect. If I can say, I'm talking to someone from the advanced light source. No, it's true. And part of this is my job is also, while I'm getting people to take risks with me, I'm doing my best to mitigate those risks for them, for the bureaucrat, for the technologist, for the person who's giving their funds and their resources to help make things happen. But at the end of the day, everyone's got to take a little risk together. And if we all put our generosity, if we all put our love, if we all put our time, our talent, our treasure on that communal table, that's when the sort of magic occurs, where the sum becomes greater than the parts, or seemingly so. And it's true, because we could never do those things on our own. There's not a single thing that's worthy up here that I could even get close to thinking about on my own. It requires community, love, and generosity to make them all happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's another question from someone in the Zoom audience, and it says, are there any projects in the East Bay people from San Francisco would have a great view?
There's one project that I would like to do that I've had in the works for a while. And I am really sincere about staying focused in San Francisco. I invite a lot of Oakland artists in. I hire a lot of Oakland artists to come play in the Golden Gate Band Shell. Dana King is an Oakland artist who worked with Monumental Reckoning. I don't believe in this division so much, although it's pretty profound that people do get tribal about it. But the new eastern span of the Bay Bridge, the white span that goes from Oakland to Yerba Buena Island, that opened about 9 years ago, will celebrate its 10th anniversary on Labor Day weekend 2023. There was a discussion going back 20 years about having what they called what do they call that? The light bar or something. They had this line of light that would go from the Oakland touchdown all the way to the Yerba Buena Island touchdown on both sides of the bridge. It was a metal halide lighting. It's kind of heavy, old technology. It's going to cost a lot, but it was a commitment in all the public meetings to the community that as a symbolic gesture of connection between communities, they would put this light in. And when that project started to happen, that piece, that element got dropped out because of costs and other things. And I looked at it and thought, okay, well, what would it take to put this in LED, and what would it take to make it be more animated? Worked with the artist Leo Villarreal to do that, and we put a proposal together to bring this, what we called East Bay Lights, forward. Cut $28 million off the budget. It was sustainable and maintainable, and really would be this gesture of, again, aesthetic equity for the entire bay on both sides of the eastern span. And that eastern span, if you look at it, go to Skate's restaurant, if it's still there in the Berkeley Marina, or whatever restaurant's there now, and just let the sun set and watch the Golden Gate Bridge disappear, and watch most of the eastern span disappear, with the exception of kind of a white sailboat of the self-anchored suspension span out by Yerba Buena Island. That would be an amazing project. The canvas of that really would be the water itself. And that's a project that eventually I'll probably come back to, because it's a very worthy, good project. But every project, one of the other things too is you'll see we have a lot of projects going. Projects sometimes have their own life and ideas of how they want to be, and you just have to be patient and walk with them and be ready to surge with them when they're ready to surge. So I'm learning all of this as I go.
Amazing. There's another question here. Is there a link to the City of Awe map?
There is not yet. But we're working on a version of that. Actually, what I'm really working on, and I think we'll get the City of Awe map there, is, to fund these projects, or to make these projects happen at all. My whole existence is to live between chicken and egg, right? You got to figure out how you're going to get permissions. You're going to figure out how the technology is going to work, but no one's going to pay for it yet until you get the permission. But you don't really get the permission until you understand the technology. And there's like all the time just trying to coax these worlds together into the void of this space. And even when you get those permissions, you get the technology, then you have this significant fundraising challenge often on some of the projects, the bigger projects. I would like to initiate the City of Awe Fund, where people who get what we're doing and have done well by San Francisco have enough faith in the organization that they make major gifts to the City of Awe Fund. That fund could be half of what the annual operating budget is for the symphony, the opera, the ballet or the Museum of Fine Art, and still we would be able to crush it for a decade and just completely turn San Francisco inside out. There was a McKinsey report that was done a couple of years ago about the organization. It was very interesting. We have an operating budget still of under $500,000. We charge nothing for our tickets, and we have a reach of 20 million people on an annual basis. If you compare that to an arts organization that does performative stuff, they have the same budget, but they have a $50 ticket and they reach 5,000 people. And if you go to the major institutions, they have $100 million budgets. They have $50 to $250 tickets for the opera, the symphony, the ballet, and they reach maybe a combined 1 million people. So we're a great value, and we just need to do a good job expressing that. And if we could get a significant fund in, we would have an electric, like I say, 5 or 10 years of crazy production of art, turning the city of San Francisco into the city of awe for a fraction of what we think of in terms of a cultural expense otherwise. So that's the trick. Some of this is just a big storytelling challenge. And if we can get the story of awe, the city of awe story down, I believe that's why Michael's here, because you're going to help me visualize the city of awe, brother. We're going to figure this out. I believe we could just become untethered from sort of the typical weight and gravity that pull you to the ground or try and compromise you with the need to find corporate funding or something else. So that's, we'll get to the City of Awe map eventually. We'll have something out there. And if anyone's super curious, I will share the link, because I'm thinking of Matt Mullenweg and being open source. So yeah, I'll give you the link and you can just sniff around on it. I'm not trying to be secretive. It's just not, you'll see it's a half-baked piece, like a lot of the stuff, until it gets baked.
And there's another question in the chat, which is actually kind of related to the question I had. So the question here is, are there any scientists in the board of Illuminate? And then my question would be, have you just thought about light in maybe more unconventional ways too? Like a lot of the projects are using visible light, but when I was talking about my research, I'm using light that's higher in energy on the electromagnetic spectrum, but also still light. So I'm curious just to know if there are any projects that venture into these other wavelengths, and if there are any scientists.
Let me answer both those
helping out.
questions. One, is there any scientists on the board of Illuminate? No, and good idea. Let's talk about it. Really good idea. One of the powerful things that we have going on now at Illuminate is because we have these Illuminary supporters. We have a handful of folks who get what we do, and they give a $50,000 unrestricted gift for a minimum of 3 years so that we can get off the bottom of the Maslow's hierarchy of need and self-actualize. That's been great. We're getting close to almost being fully funded. And that means we can take on projects like all the projects you saw there. We take nothing back from those projects. All that money goes to the projects. We're in service to the projects. We're not trying to find projects from which we can make money. We've got that covered, which is great. It also means that we can have a board that isn't about just who can cut fat checks. So we have a board that's a very, very much a spiritual advisor board that I can go to. We have one of the founders of Burning Man on the board. We've got the artist Dana King on our board. We had the head of Glide Memorial Church, Marvin White, on the board. We have Matt Mullenweg, again, co-founder of WordPress, 1 in 3 websites in the world, runs on that platform, is an amazing thinker. We've just got this beautiful collection of people that I can go to for deep advice. So it'd be interesting to think about having someone with a scientific bearing. And in terms of your question about, light that's not visible across the spectrum, that's pretty conceptual. We'd have to figure out, how could that be interpreted back out into the realm. And I would say that, because I don't have an arts background, I think it's the greatest gift for me, because I don't know how to paint. I don't know how to draw. I don't even really get excited about the classic artist dialogue, kind of the hair splitting about things. I go to the museum and you stand in front of the painting and you read the sign and it says the artist's mother worked in the hairdressing place, so he's using the curlers, and you kind of get it and like, okay, that's kind of cool. I get what's going on here. That's fun for me personally. Illuminate's art, I want to come down and sink its claws into your chest and lift you up into the heaven. I don't want you to have to think whether it's art or not. I just want you to be moved. That's, what is this and how does it exist? And it just makes you want to reach out and grab the hand of the person next to you, because you're a human and you're in a sense of awe. And so, to think about a project that has the kind of immediacy and doesn't have the veil of needing to have a lot of knowledge or art background or specific language or orientation or philosophy, but just speaks to the broader essence of the humanness that we all possess, the highest space. What Illuminate, and I'm personally trying to do a lot, is defy the defy the force of polarization that is defining us as a country, certainly right now, and as a world? And how do we find those common points of sort of truth, of awe, that melt us into the humanity of our being? So yeah, let's think how your project could translate in some magnificent way.
Sounds great. Yeah, thank you so much for coming today and for giving this amazing presentation.
My pleasure, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you.